Hello and welcome. It's another edition of the Confessions podcast. We have an assemblage of accounts of awful actions from some devilish drive-time devotees. Impressive, huh? Script change. Anyway, this week's mischievous melange, if you wouldn't mind, features a cold call caper, a fearsome face paint fiasco, and a boisterous bogus bear, and a foul. Anyway, just go with it. Sister Bobby from the Priory has joined us into the collective. And
Good afternoon.
You're very welcome. So here we go. Tonight's tale comes from... There you go. Let's get to the end. It's from Steve. Thank you, Steve. Dear Father Simon and the Forgiveness Few, I throw myself on the mercy of the collective for something that happened to me just last year. Like pretty much everybody who owns a phone, I've been subjected to a lot of cold callers. They ring up regarding PPI, new boilers, surveys, and most of all, traffic accidents that I might have been in. Whilst it is true I had been in one, it was a minor one several years ago and had been dealt with efficiently, and as far as I was concerned, my insurance company, everyone was happy, the matter was closed. I had repeatedly asked for my name to be taken off their list, but they always called back, usually when I was doing something far more important, like watching Game of Thrones or something. So I decided that the next time I received a call, I would play along. I did a bit of prep by using the internet to provide me with the relevant details of a certain fictional driver and his fictional car. A few days later, whilst I was on my lunch break, I got a call. Yeah, can we speak to Mr. Buxton, please? Speaking. Yeah, I'm Dave from Acme Solicitors. You're in...
Yeah, we're taking this from the Wile E. Coyote school, are we? Right.
Your insurance company has passed on your details to us regarding a road traffic accident. We'd like to talk to you about compensation. OK, so I'm thinking it's time to lay it on thick, see how long it was before he realised that he was being had. Oh yes, I say, is that about the hit and run? Oh, says the guy, I didn't see that. I quickly interrupted him as I didn't want him to start leading the conversation and bring it to an abrupt end. Yeah, I say, it was a hit and run. Yeah, some idiot in a red and yellow convertible hit me, drove off. I don't remember much about him. He had a blue hat with some gold bling on top. OK, says the guy. I could hear him typing away furiously, taking down the details. The excitement in his voice indicated that reaching this stage of the call was probably a rare event, and that he was no doubt used to people hanging up on a regular basis. Yes, I continued, he had a passenger with him, an elderly bloke with large white beard, moustache, and really big ears. Right, says the guy. And it was here I played my joker, as it were. I'd found a car that matched my needs perfectly. Someone had created a real-life replica of this fictional car, right down to the car registration. So I gave the car registration details to Dave, who said, OK, this is interesting. The insurance company hasn't given us all of this. Yeah, anyway, I continued. There was a witness. Oh, says the guy. Yes, Miss Blyton, B-L-Y-T-O-N, first name Enid. Here I was sure the hoax would be spotted, but to my eternal delight, the significance of the name went unnoticed. Oh, right, so you actually had a witness. Sorry, wrong voice. Right, so you had a witness? Yes, I did. Good. The car registration's coming up as a Fiat Coupe. Was that it? Oh, I don't know. It could be. I said, I'm not very good with cars. I know it was a convertible. I was wondering if he'd done an internet image search, and if so, did he recognise it? If he did, the call would be ending about now. Clearly he didn't. Did you contact your insurance company? I hadn't considered that I might be asked about this. Fortunately, I was able to quickly improvise an answer. No, I left it in the hands of the policeman who dealt with the case. PC Plod, his name. Amazingly, he was too busy thinking about his commission to actually notice what I was saying, and we carried on. Right, so it's in the hands of the police, is it? Yes. Well, that's good. Thank you for the information. I'm not sure why the insurance company didn't pass it on, but what I'll do is I'll talk to my supervisor and see what he thinks we can do. I'll look into it, get back to you. Well, I thought to myself, once the penny is dropped, that would be it. But I said, I look forward to hearing back. Anyway, the call ended and I turned to my work colleagues to tell them what had just happened, and I was halfway through the tale when the phone rang again. Much to my delight, it was Acme Solicitors one more time. I interrupted the anecdote to answer. My workmates all listened in, chuckling quietly. Is that Stephen? Different voice. Different voice. Wow. From the repertoire.
One of 1,000 voices.
Yes, it is. Hello. This is Jim, one of the supervisors from Acme Solicitors. You spoke a short today about the hit and run? Yes, that's right. And you contacted your insurance company? No, as I said to your colleague, I left it in the hands of the policeman who attended the scene, PC Plod, the witness Enid Blyton. The guy says, was there anyone else around? Well, I continued, there was a wobbly man, I think, a tubby bear, and a clockwork mouse. Silence. A clockwork mouse? Yes, and his friendly elephant, Mr. Jumbo, standing by a multicoloured town hall, and there were two naughty Oh, right, this is a wind-up. Oh, well done for spotting, I say sarcastically. Now, could you please remove me from your list? So, Father Simon, I seek absolution, not from fooling the people at Acme Solicitors about my non-existent car crash with Noddy and Big Ears. As far as I'm concerned, they're scammers, and as such they deserve everything that they get for wasting my time. Besides, I'm not penitent about my practical joke at all. I'm already prepared for the next time a personal injury cold caller rings, as I'm going to tell them about a horrible work accident. Gillian and Jack and myself carrying a large container of liquid up a slope. I get off lightly, but Jack had terrible head injuries, received a really bad first aid treatment consisting of parcel wrapping paper, and it was soaked in acetic acid. Anyway, the ones I seek forgiveness for are the people who I've told this anecdote to over the last year, as it makes me as much of a time waster as Acme Solicitors, or Acme Unsolicitors. Yours in humbleness, Steve. With a wizard prang, I think. Let me see what Sister Rebecca makes of this. Savage treatment for a cold caller.
I don't think it's time wasting at all. I think it's time well spent if you can tell people about a way of getting these people off your back. I love the way the story went on for so long before the guy realised that he was winding him up. So no, I think anything to get these really annoying cold callers off your back is good, and you're forgiven, Steve.
The elderly bloke and the large white beard, okay, that's fair enough. But as soon as Enid Blyton comes along as the witness, I think that's the telltale sign. Sister Bobby from the crime.
Yeah, it seems like a victimless crime, doesn't it? I think the guys at Acme would have just been relieved not to have been sworn at, to be honest, and quite happy to listen for a little bit. And I'm sure there must be a competition in the office with who can stay on the line the longest without actually getting the phone slammed down on them. So actually, it's a kind of win-win, and actually anyone can give us inspiration to how to entertain ourselves at home when we're bored.
You may well be
done.
right there, but let's see what Brother Matthew makes of all
I'm
this.
particularly impressed with Bobby, who spotted that was Noddy just from the description of the car, which is
Really?
very impressive.
Very good.
Yeah. Let's find. Everyone hates those calls. We all hate those calls. But I have a degree of sympathy with the people who are in the call centre, and every single call they make, people are shouting at them and telling them to take off the system. So I am not going to forgive just because I'm in their corner, because no one else is going to be.
Anyway, here's tonight's tale comes from Stu. Thank you, Stu. You can send yours to confessions@bbc.co.uk. Disarming the Understanding and Forgiving Collective. I submit this confession in the hope that you can clear my conscience before I leave my job as a teacher at the end of this academic year after 33 years. My story takes place in the late 1970s at a comprehensive school in Bradford, which in those pre-Ofsted days was a failing school. In the Ofsted days, it became a closed school. I was one of a select group of students who were studying A-levels in the sixth form. Along with three of my best friends, I was studying English literature under the guidance of two teachers, one of which is the subject of this story. Mrs. H was a difficult teacher. As sixth formers, we expected to be treated with respect, but this was not forthcoming. Mrs. H had a reputation which she seemed justly proud. She dressed in dark, drab, evil clothes and had a personality to match. She seemed to particularly hate the male students in the group, and no matter how much effort we put into our work, it was never ever good enough. The girls, on the other hand, were marvellous and adored by Mrs. H. It did not take long before we males had had enough, and we started to dream up a few conspiracies which would put Mrs. H in her place. But as spineless adolescents, nothing ever materialised. Until one day, the school's drama group were putting on a production of Rocking Robin Superhood, which I've never heard. Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Is that a well-known...
Sounds dreadful.
It does. Imagine having to go and applaud your child. We're very excited. He's actually got the role of the hood. Anyway, and our English classroom, being close to the hall, was being utilised as a costume storeroom. In this production, there was a bear, and propped up in the corner of the room was a bear suit, huge, furry, and very stinky. The conspiracy was on. We needed someone to wear the suit. It could not be any of us because we were spineless. But there was an annoying third-year boy who used to burst into the sixth form common room and annoy people as they were playing cards, that kind of thing. He was naughty around school and he seemed to enjoy causing trouble. He was perfect for the job. It didn't take much for the group of 6 17-year-olds to persuade the said boy to bring our plan to life. We gave him pear drops. He said yes. On Bear Day, as it became known, the said boy was to take his position in the bear suit at the end of lunchtime, ready for our signal. We had agreed that we would give the signal of 3 knocks when Mrs. H launched into her habitual "you boys are useless" monologue. Anyway, the lesson progressed without such abuse, but the bear clearly wanted to get on with it and was desperate to perform, and without any signal from us, he jumped up in the suit, roared, sort of, in a third-year way, and proceeded to dance around the room. He skipped and leapt up and down the aisles as though he were a circus bear from the olden days. Well, we were genuinely surprised at this performance, and Mrs. H obviously saw our startled faces when the performance began. She was not impressed and ordered the bear to get out. Not a line I've actually ever said before in a confession. But instead, he went for another lap. Well, Mrs. H now joined in, chasing the bear around the class. But the bear was powered by a youth, and Mrs. H, anything but. The bear was nimble, and to our cheers led a merry dance, skipping over bags, gym kits and assorted legs before finally running out of the door. Mrs. H angrily turned towards us, telling us to get out and find out who's that bear. Anyway, we followed the bear and found him along the corridor. He'd fallen flat on his face, actually, because the costume had finally got the better of him. Removing him from the costume, we returned to Mrs. H with the empty outfit, claiming failure at identifying the culprit. Could have been anyone, miss. He scarpered before we could see his face. He looked like a wrong 'un, though. Eyes too close to his nose, that kind of thing. Anyway, Bear Boy escaped and Mrs. H went on a sabbatical at the end of that year. And we were rescued by another teacher who managed to get us all an A-level in English literature. So I need your forgiveness, though, on various levels. The boy in the bear suit was actually, coerced into his performance, and I hope our methods of persuasion did not cause him any distress. Mrs. H never accused us of any involvement, and I'm reluctant to ask forgiveness for our treatment of her, as it was richly deserved. However, my main dilemma is that as a teacher of 33 years, specialising in behaviour management and behaviour improvement, I ask for forgiveness on behalf of the many students that I've spoken to, and indeed disciplined in my career. I'd like to retire with a clear conscience, if you could please forgive me. Well, I like a story with a bear outfit, and a little bit of Rockin' Robin Superhood, whatever that is. But as Matt says, almost certainly terrible. Nice pre-Ofsted tale. Let me see what Sister Rebecca's looking quite fierce about.
I'm intrigued about what they did to Bear Boy. He didn't really go into that, but it sounds like they actually did something quite bad to coerce him into getting into that suit.
They put pear drops.
Do you think if it was pear drops, then that's fine? But if it was something,
it might have been do this, or we'll put pear drops in your ears.
Yeah, exactly, or something else. I think as well he was hypocritical for doing that and then becoming a teacher. But I suppose I don't know.
He's going to retire. He's going to retire.
We've all done things in our youth that we regret, and it doesn't mean you should be able to move on in life. So I'm going to forgive.
Thank you. That counts a lot, because once a head girl, always a head girl. Sister Bobby.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure really, because they weren't big enough to wear the bear suit themselves. I've got a picture of the Hofmeister bear doing a merry dance around the classroom. It is very funny.
It's a dated reference.
Well, it was a long time ago. No, but a yogurty bear does exist, if you can think of that one. What I was going to say is Unforgiven, because the poor boy that got coerced, he could have really got into trouble. It's the fact that they didn't wear the bear suit themselves.
He might get in touch, actually.
Yeah, so pear drops are not enough, in my word. And the poor teacher, who then basically left and retired, because I think teachers have a really tough time. It's tough teaching kids. So Unforgiven, despite the retirement.
Appealing to the gallery there. Let's see, is the casting vote then?
I am firmly in Mrs. H's corner on this. First of all, this idea, you see marking us down because I'm a boy. It's because I'm a boy. That's why it's because you don't understand metaphors and you don't know what a character arc is. That's why you're getting marked down in English lit.
Is that what you tell your son?
Absolutely right. And the other thing, what is she supposed to do when this bear starts running around her classroom? Nothing she can do. She has to chase the bear and find out who's in the bear costume. She does everything by the book. Well done, Mrs. H. Definitely not forgiven.
Gather round then. Here's tonight's top confession from Auntie M. Thank you, Auntie M. Father Simon, the Confessional Collective. I seek forgiveness for a crime which occurred when I was a young teacher in charge of the school drama club. Excellent. And consequently responsible for the end-of-term play. The children opted for our own version of The Wizard of Oz. Ours included a multitude of munchkins, a dancing rainbow, of course, flightless monkeys — it's a primary school play, for heaven's sake — and all the usual crew: Dorothy, Lion, Scarecrow, witches, good and bad, that kind of thing. The play was to be performed in the last week of term, once to the whole school, twice as evening performances to parents. All was almost ready. There was one weekend left for children to polish up on their lines, dancing rainbows to step in line, costume makers to add the finishing stitches, scenery and prop makers to add a final coat of paint, and generally prepare for the greatest all-seeing, all-dancing extravaganza. I had done all I could to make sure things would go well, but there was one more thing that I had to prepare for over the weekend, and that was to practice the stage makeup for the heartless lion and the brainless scarecrow. Luckily for me, other artistic teachers had offered to be in charge of makeup for the Munchkins, and the monkeys and the Tin Man and the witches. It was down to me to come up with a good design, easy to replicate and easy to administer onto an excited child's face. I needed to work on getting it right for the performances. All I needed for my lion was a willing model. On the last Friday of term, a wintry, freezing dark evening, I set off from school, laden with all my school clutter, including a bag of stage makeup sticks, to make my journey home on public transport. I'd lent my car to my then boyfriend, who had promised to pick me up at 5 o'clock, but I'd had a message via the school secretary to say he couldn't make it. There are many names I could suggest at this point, but let's settle with Leo. Leo had set off a disastrous start to my weekend. I walked almost a mile to the bus stop, waited in the cold for my first bus, then waited again for my second bus, getting colder still, then a further uphill walk to my flat. I finally arrived frozen and downhearted. In my flat, I found Leo asleep in front of a blazing gas fire, which must have been on for several hours. He still had his coat on, and yes, he was definitely in a very deep sleep. I joined up the dots and worked out that Leo must have met up with his workmates for a drink, and the result was now on my carpet, snoring and dribbling. I knew he was unlikely to wake up or be any good for Friday night company. I was downhearted. Once I'd made a hot drink, had a shower and warmed up, I unpacked my school bags and came across the stage makeup. All I needed, as I said, was a model. Well, I decided to make the best of things and set to work on Leo's face with the makeup sticks. I worked quickly and gently. It wasn't long before a glorious, lionly lion, a magnificent king of the jungle, snored and dribbled before me, still fast asleep, and I admired my work. Then I remembered that the call from Leo wasn't the only call at school, and that I'd had that day. During the hectic lunch hour, I'd received a call from a persistent life assurance salesman who wanted to visit me to discuss teachers' pensions. He'd called several times before, and this was irritating the secretary. So in order to stop his pestering, I agreed that he could visit me that evening at 8:15, and it was now 8:10. OMG! As we didn't say in those days, I grabbed my warmest coat, hat, scarf and gloves and rushed out of the flat. From a safe distance, I watched a man approach the door and ring the bell. And then ring it again. Then knock, then ring it again. Until a lion appeared. An angry, sore-headed, confused, intolerant lion who did not know at that moment that he had the appearance of a lion, thanks to my artistic skills. The salesman was as alarmed by the vision as he was by the torrent of abuse he got for disturbing a sleeping and not sober man. There was an awful lot of shouting. Some of it included, "All right, calm down, Leo," before the door was slammed shut. I decided not to go back to the flat quite then, so I walked off and watched a film. Then I dawdled back to the flat. Leo was gone. Nothing was ever said about that night, the makeup, the salesman. Hilariously, I think Leo thought he'd dreamt the whole thing. Anyway, Father Simon, the lion in the school play looked wonderful. I don't seek forgiveness from Leo, who deserved to be humiliated with makeup and a lot more. But I do seek forgiveness from the salesman for wasting his time on a cold, dark Friday night, for the shock he must have had when a lion answered the door instead of me, and for the verbal abuse and threats that he was subjected to. But I think in the interests of my relationship and my sanity and the school play, it was all entirely justified. Leo sounds a bit of a no-hoper, I'd have said, Rebecca. What do you think?
He does. It's funny that he was called Leo, isn't it? And that she made him up as a lion.
It's
was that a coincidence, do you think?
I think she was just giving him that name to ease the story.
He was in a very deep sleep, having not felt that she was putting makeup all over his face. But I suppose
a few mojitos had been had.
Yes, that's probably true. I think the funniest thing was that nothing was ever said about that. He was so ashamed or embarrassed or just confused by the whole incident that he never mentioned it. But I think really what stands out for me in this confession is the fact that this pension salesman was turning up at the house at 8 o'clock in the evening.
You don't want that, do you?
How bizarre is that? So I don't think he deserves forgiveness at all. I think he deserves all he's going to get if he's going to turn up at that time of night. So I'm going to forgive Auntie M.
OK, Auntie M has one in her favour. Let's see what Sister Bobby from the Prior is making of that.
Well, I feel sorry for the salesman because, you know, it's a tough job and you have to catch people when they're in and they don't want to be in. So going out on a Friday night to work is really, really
Nowadays,
difficult.
they can just ring us all the time.
Well, yeah, of course, unless you've got the telephone preference service. Anyway, what I was going to say because I'm really confused that he didn't wake up at all. How drunk was he to have not felt anything?
Too drunk to notice the makeup, as the Dead Kennedys sang famously.
Or didn't.
Well, of course, Auntie Em, you're definitely forgiven. Not married then, I take it?
Not as far as I know.
Apparently not.
What do you think?
We've all had we've been a little bit too merry where we would not feel. I know that I've been in a position where somebody could have put makeup on my face and I wouldn't have known.
Is that right?
But what I wouldn't have been able to do is sober up and then wonder, what am I doing with makeup on my face? So how does he not realise that he's been... Because he might have dreamt, or might have thought that he dreamt that this guy comes to the door, but when he wakes up...
You're not going to look at your face, are you? You can't see what you look like.
Yeah, no, but when he wakes up, as in sober wakes up, he will go, why have I got lion makeup all over my face? So, for that reason, I am going to forgive. That didn't make any sense.
No, it made no sense at all, but it's perfectly fine. Thank you very much indeed. It's another foodie-based confession. It's actually Christmas-related, Nigel, but we kept hold of it.
Thank you.
Because it's very heavy on the food department.
Perfect.
And I think you might like this one. So the novice is in, as ever. This comes from Sabrina. Thank you, Sabrina, for tonight's tale. In the early 1980s, Simon and I started my nurse training in London. We all lived in a nurse's home which consisted of 3 floors and over 150 rooms. Each floor had about 2 groups of 3 toilets, 2 groups of 2 baths. Hope you're doing a little sketch with this one. There were no showers. 3 kitchens which consisted of a sink and a cooker without a fridge. It was frugal. If it wasn't nailed down, it got nicked. You had to provide your own toilet roll and bath plug, and to use the oven with it.
Bath plug?
Yes.
Why is that a problem?
I have to tell you, this still happens.
Yeah.
Student
Really?
accommodation, bring your own
Why?
plug.
Bring your own bath plug.
Bring your own bath plug.
Bring your own teeth,
the way it
everything.
goes.
Otherwise they go. Yeah.
Anyway. And to use the oven with an oven rack, you had to belong to one of the oven rack cliques. When our nursing group started in September, 4 of us became good friends. As Christmas approached, we knew that we'd be staying in the nurses' home over the festive period, as we would be working, and as non-car drivers, there was no public transport to get us anywhere either. So we started to plan what we'd do. And this is where I shall change the names of my friends to Annette, Flo and Belle. Annette was the cook, because she'd done a lot of cooking at home for her younger brothers and sisters, but the rest of us didn't have much experience in the kitchen. Belle was a vegetarian, Flo wasn't into cooking, only making wine in large jars in her bedroom. Aye. And I had no clue how to cook anything. In fact, I'd already set fire to the kitchen with a boil-in-a-bag fish. So how you can actually do that, I'm not at all sure. So we had decided to get a small turkey breast. However, Flo and Annette, who did the shopping, ended up by buying a full-size turkey because they said it was better value. Annette promised to do the cooking. Just before Christmas Eve, Annette went off sick with a chest infection and asthma. So she went home to Cheshire. After my early shift on Christmas Day, I went to Belle's room to start the cooking process. Due to the lack of oven racks, I started cooking in 3 separate kitchens, as everything had to go in the oven racks. I had to go on the... Hang on, I'll start that one again. I started cooking in 3 separate kitchens, as everything had to go on the floor of the oven. The enormous turkey just squeezed in, and then we sat and waited with various round trips to the residence to check in all the various kitchens. This is like you preparing one of our dishes.
It sounds just like it, yeah.
After a few hours, Flo was in no fit state to help due to her festive spirits. Yeah. And by the time we dished up, she was feeling too sick to eat anything, so she went to her room. So the 2 of us faced an enormous bird. Luckily for me, Belle tucked into some turkey, as her vegetarianism apparently was suspended at Christmas.
Good for her.
Which she hadn't previously mentioned.
Yeah.
Very convenient. On the whole, we were feeling quite pleased with ourselves, despite 1 tray of roast potatoes being completely incinerated, as we'd forgotten that we'd used the oven in that particular kitchen. Now, this is where we need forgiveness, Father Simon. As our rooms were quite small, it wasn't unusual to sit in the corridor outside, and this is where we were with all of the food on the floor, because we had no tables or chairs. Student life, huh? So we had the great idea to invite fellow residents to come along for a free meal. So we went along the corridor, knocking on the doors. People came out with their plates and helped themselves. Finally, it came the time to clear the remains away. And this is where Belle discovered that I hadn't actually removed the giblets. I didn't know that both ends could be stuffed with the innards. And worse still, the whole lower half of the bird was undercooked.
Oh, no.
In fact, if I'm honest, it wasn't cooked at all. It was completely raw. Goodness knows what the other nurses had eaten, but Belle and I had eaten from the top, so we're fine. Anyway, we hurriedly threw the bird away and said nothing to anybody. So I'm not asking for forgiveness from Flo, who was disappointed not to have any leftovers the following day, nor do I seek forgiveness from the person who found the smoking potatoes, patatas. But I seek, just getting in the Spanish fly for later.
Well done.
But I do seek forgiveness from anyone who was food poisoned on that Christmas day and anyone affected by a possible increase in staff sickness on Boxing Day. Which, let's be honest, if you've eaten raw chicken, there's got to be a chance that there are going to be implications. Don't try this at home, kids. What do you think, Sister Rebecca?
This is a bit like that confession we had recently about the raw chicken,
blood.
isn't it? And whether or not you can actually get food poisoning from raw turkey. I don't know the answer to that, Nigel. I'm sure you do. But I don't think that's the point. I think the point is Sabrina was being very generous in offering this turkey to everyone on the corridor. So, good for her. She didn't know that it wasn't cooked. So I'm going to forgive.
Nigel,
Yeah,
tell us.
I do totally agree with that. And also, any nurse, I would have hoped that when they were carving the turkey off the bone, that they'd have been aware that it was actually undercooked, and you wouldn't knowingly. I mean, you can tell when it is undercooked.
It's raw.
Yeah, it's absolutely raw, and you wouldn't be eating it. So, and it doesn't sound as though they were aware of anyone going down with something terrible on the illness front. Anyway, so let's hope that was okay. So definitely Sabrina on this occasion, and Belle, veggie turned off for one night. We forgive you both.
Yeah, no harm done, sounds like.
How do you know?
Apparently, as far as we know. What I've got a problem with is this place where apparently there are no bath plugs and apparently no tables. They're having to sit in the corridor.
Yes,
what
on
kind
the
of place is this?
It's a nursing home in the 80s.
All we've got are doors and a floor, and that's it. And for that reason alone, I am not going to forgive.
Well, that was it. Has that sparked a thought, maybe in your soul? Maybe there's something you haven't told us. You've been listening to these for a while and you still haven't sent us an email. confessions@bbc.co.uk or go via the website. Thank you. And the Weekly Mayo is available to download while you're there.